Kyle Stahl with Stahl Agronomy, back again for a new segment I like to call the Chem of the Week. And I'm just going to try to do one chemical per week and kind of go through some of the things I like about them and some of the things that we found could be issues with them. And the first one I want to do, I was thinking about maybe we should do something that I really, really like, and maybe I should do something, a chemical that I just love. But this week we're going to just talk about Callisto, which is something that I think is both a really good chemistry, and at the same time it's a little scary to me in some aspects. But so we'll go into it. So Callisto is an HPD or HPPD chemistry. It's come off patent. So when we talk about Callisto, we mean anything that's mesotrione. So mesotrione could be it's a product in Lumax, Acuron. It's in a lot of generics now. Bellum is one of them. There's another product from Drexel that's basically a Lumax in a very generic form. And it's really, to me, that the Drexel chemical has been. We used to have Lumax, and then we had Lumax EZ, which was a better formulation. It blended better with UAN. It was just a better formula of Lumax. And when we look at the Drexel stuff and a lot of the things that are coming down the generic markets, we're kind of going back to what we had when we first had the original Lumax. We're not seeing the 32 cold 32 capabilities of being mixed with that as well. We're seeing issues with getting it out of the wrist or the spray tank and the booms. We're kind of going back to some of the early days of what we had with Lumax back in the mid 2000s when it first came out, and that's a little concerning sometimes. But at the same time, it's nice to see some generics come out, and we're seeing Callisto in different mixes. When we talk about Callisto, when it first came out, we had straight Callisto and we had Lumax, and then a couple years down the road we had Halix GT, and then we had Lumax EZ, and then we had Callisto Extra, which is Callisto plus atrazine, and now we've got it in Acuron, you've got it in Resicor, you've got it in what are former DuPont Corteva brand herbicides now. So we're actually seeing a lot of that stuff mixed with rimsulfuron. It's really it's gotten such a broad use in the market. It's both good and bad. So for me, Callisto is a great herbicide when we talk about small seeded broadleaves and a little bit about grass control, mostly crabgrass. Mesotrione does a great job on crabgrass. It's really, really good on water hemps and a lot of our small seeded lamb's quarters. It's done a really good job on those. And we talk a little bit about, when I say water hemp, that it does a good job on water hemp and the amaranth species of weeds. There are some regions of the country where we're seeing HPPD tolerance to some of these weeds. So while for us it works, in other places it might not work as well. But for us, it is a great herbicide. It's been really good on a lot of different weed species. It's got really good residual. It's very flexible on timing for the most part. Some of the generics, we got to be a little careful about leaf injury and leaf burn. We're going back to some of the premixes that we had back when Lumax and some of those chemicals first came out. So we're starting to see a little bit of issues with, just staying in the tank, and we're starting to see some crop response, which we haven't seen in the last few years. So it's still a really good chemistry, but at the same time, it still has its holes. So when we were spraying a lot of Lumax, maybe 8 to 10 years ago, we were seeing a lot of ragweed escapes. And that's basically because in Lumax, we've got Dual, we've got Callisto, and we've got atrazine. And atrazine is really good on ragweed. It's not the be-all, end-all of ragweed herbicides, but it's good for pre-emerge. Dual does okay on ragweed. Mostly with Dual, we're going to pick up grass control, and we're going to pick up some small seededs. And same thing with Callisto. So we're not seeing a really heavy label on ragweed, and that was the MO with Lumax when it was out. We had really good control, but where we had heavy ragweed pressure, we had to switch to something else. So back in the day, I went with Keystone, our Harness Extra, and Hornet. And the Stinger and the Python in there, we actually saw a very, very good ragweed control. The only thing we were really weak on was some grasses and a little bit on velvet leaf, and that was always kind of the MO with those. And velvet leaf I can kind of handle. Ragweed, when we get a significant ragweed population, it's hard to get out and it's really hard to control. So we kind of took the good with the bad in that situation and went to a different program. When Acheron came out, we all got excited because we were adding this bicyclopyrone, and we were getting really excited about the fact that we could use, maybe we can go back to the atrazine and get some dual, because dual's a really good chemistry. There's nothing wrong with acetochlor, harness, surpass, keystone. It's really good chemistry. It's got better fall panicum control. We see some better control there. It takes less rainfall to activate. But dual does a little bit better job on a lot of the other grass species and small seededs. It really just did a better job. So when Acheron came out, the initial rating on Acheron and ragweed was a 9, and we got all really excited. When you looked at what was actually in Acheron itself is a lower rate of dual, lower rate of mesotrione, a somewhat similar rate of atrazine, and then they add this bicyclopyrone ingredient in, which is another HPPD. And when we went out, the Lumax feelings kind of came back. We needed a lot or more rainfall to activate it. We just didn't see the ragweed control. Basically, I had fields where we had 6 years of no ragweed and no resprays when we were going with a full upfront program, and we were coming back and respraying those spots. So it was kind of like I said, it was kind of like watered down Lumax. Not saying that Acheron's a horrible chemical. I mean, in its own, it's actually very good. It increased our burn down potential that we had over Lumax. We saw a better burn down, especially on our no-till acres. But at the same time, we were giving up a lot on ragweed control, which for us, that's a big thing. If we're going with a full rate pre-program, that was a problem. And a lot of people will tell you that full rate pre-programs are bad. You should be doing a 2-pass. And it really depends on the soil type you're in and the environment you're in. For our area, we're such heavy clays. In the last several years, we've had significant rainfall events. It's almost really, really hard for us to get back into the field post-emerge. In fact, we switched to top dress about 6-7 years ago. And with top dress nitrogen applications, it's been incredibly difficult, probably about half of those years, to get that nitrogen on. So for us, a full rate pre-program is probably about the best way for us to go. Ideally, in different situations, yeah, you could go with a half rate of Acheron and come back with Roundup and Status. You can add a couple different chemistries in there and save some money. But for us, that was the best program. So anyway, Acheron really just gave us all these tinglies of kind of going back to that day. For us, Reservoir came out, and for that, I mean, basically we were going back to acetochlor, Stinger, and then now we had Callisto to get rid of all the concerns we had. We didn't have the crabgrass control with acetochlor. Now we do with Callisto. We picked up our velvet leaf control. It's been a really good chemistry for us. So, I mean, for me, Callisto is a great herbicide. Mesotrione is really, really good. It has some holes and it has some flaws. The other thing that's scary to me is we went from, if you use Lumax or Halex, you were using Callisto, and if you were using alternative programs, you weren't using an HPPD for the most part, to now we're basically using HPPD on every acre. And like before, when I said we are starting to see some areas where we have water hemp and the amaranth species starting to show resistance to mesotrione or HPPD modes of action, now we're getting to that point where, man, now we're starting to use our Callisto like it's Roundup, and we're kind of setting ourselves up for some issues. The nice thing is, for most of these pre-emerge mixes or even the post-emerge mixes, Callisto isn't on its own. We don't have a lot of meso going out just by itself. But at the same time, now we're getting more and more generics, and it seems like more people are buying their own sprayers. We're starting to see more and more where it's just mesotrione plus glyphosate and maybe atrazine. And that's the other thing with mesotrione. There's a definite synergistic effect between mesotrione and atrazine. If you're going out with atrazine or with mesotrione, and you're not in atrazine prohibition area, you really should be adding at least a half a pound of atrazine post and at least a pound pre. It just, the synergistic effect between the two is so great that you can't avoid to not put it in there. You pick up a much better control on post-emerge or emerge grasses and plants, and we pick up a better residual control, but post-emerge, basically atrazine plus mesotrione is a must if you can do it. And, you know, it's been a great program. The scary thing for me is the amount of acres, like I said, that we're using all this chemistry on. And that being said, we are now going to these days of, you know, there's a proposal for MGI beans, which is mesotrione tolerant beans. And if we go to these MGI beans, we could be potentially using mesotrione in corn and soybeans, which reminds me of something else, glyphosate. So it's kind of scary, but at the same time, it's really good. So for me, you know, it's really kind of it's a catch-22. It's such a good herbicide. We're so happy to have it, but at the same time, we need to make sure we practice good management with it. You know, especially in corn. If we're going out post-emerge, going out with just a mesotrione, Roundup and atrazine program, or even going out with just mesotrione and glyphosate, it's really scary. We need to make sure we're mixing in some dual acetylchlor, even Outlook at the same token. Mixing in another broadleaf chemical if possible, making sure that we kind of get multiple modes of action on these weeds and not just relying on that HPPD to get us control. So it's really it's an interesting chemical of the week for me, especially when you talk about how great it is, and at the same time we have so many concerns going into the future with it. So it's one of those things we need to pay attention to. But stay tuned, we're going to have more of these as we kind of go through the winter.